My guest today is a survivor of Hindi cinema. She has lived through its highs, its amnesia, and its constant reinventions. She began when writers were shaped by memory, not metrics, when stories were absorbed by watching, living, remembering. She rose in the early years of this century, carried narrative through shifting tastes, and helped define a certain emotional grammar of popular cinema. Her writing lives in films that audiences didn't just watch, but carried with them. Wo Lamhe, Avarapan, Murder 2, Jism 2, Raz 3, and the aching resonance of Ashiki 2, a film whose afterlife still breathes in the culture. These were not algorithm-friendly templates. They were stories drawn from longing, guilt, faith, and broken love. Written by someone who knew these terrains from the inside. Then, the world changed. The digital age arrived. Gatekeepers shifted. Power moved into hands that no longer carried the archive she carries in her bones. Algorithms replaced instinct. Speed replaced listening. Memory became optional. She did not flinch. She kept writing. Across languages, across forms, not as reinvention, but as continuation. Her body of work is not a strategy. It is evidence of stamina, of someone who understands that stories do not expire just because the market gets impatient. What makes her rare is not success. It is durability. In a system trained to chase trends, she writes from wounds. She does not tailor her voice to the room. She brings the room back to the human scale. She is still on the crease, not asking for permission, not auditioning for relevance, just doing the hardest thing left for a writer today. Staying honest when honesty is no longer rewarded. Today on the Pooja Bhatt Show, she doesn't arrive as nostalgia or revival. She arrives as proof that lived experience outlasts fashion, that craft survives indifference, and that survival itself is a form of resistance. Because when the system runs on algorithms, lived truth becomes an act of defiance. This is not a comeback story. It is a survival story. And survival, in times like these, is its own quiet victory. So welcome to the Pooja Bhatt Show, Shagufta Rafiq.
Thank you, Pooja. Thank you so much for such lovely words. I never thought in my entire life that I'll be introduced this way. I'm honored, truly, and humbled at the same time.
Do you remember that you've done all this work?
I do remember, but what has changed is that when I see my work today, I kind of shut it off because I am not writing actively anymore. And when I see my old work, it kind of saddens me that this is something that I had done. It was good work, decent work. And I don't want to revisit that because it pains me. It reminds me of the once glorious phase that I had seen, the audience reaction, the accolades, the claps. And there's no more of it. This disturbs me now. My own film clips, when I see it on Reels, on Facebook, I scroll up. I don't see it anymore because it hurts me. That phase, it just came and it just went off.
But it's fair to say that you're the sequel queen.
Yes. Yes.
So can you please accept that and put that crown on your head and say, I am Shagufta Rafiq, I'm the sequel queen. Murder 2, Jannat 2,
Ashiki 2,
Jism 2,
Raz 2,
and 3. So abhi kya jaan logi?
It was another kind of a high. And Basan had told me, see, it will not last, so enjoy it. So
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
But then what lasts, Gupta?
Yeah,
Nothing lasts.
Yeah.
You need to just keep writing stories.
Yeah, inshallah.
Don't shut that door.
I'm not sure that many producers right now are interested in working with writers who they have already decided are has-beens. I know that someday things will change. People will come towards more writers who have written stories, grown up on Hindi movies and seen a lot of Hindi cinema. They know the pulse of the Indian audience, and I'm quite hopeful that things will change soon. But as of now, things have changed drastically for a lot of writers. So at the moment, I'm a little scattered, but I'm not hopeless.
I always say, Shagufta, that to be called a has-been, you have to have been.
Yeah, true.
Even I've heard by people who tried to be mean,
Yeah.
"Arey, tum to has-been ho."
Yeah.
मैंने बोला, but I've been, na.
Yeah.
Then I can be a has-been.
In fact, just a couple of days back, there was a film that I was offered, and they wanted to give me a certain amount of money, and I wanted more. And the reaction that the production house gave was, "But she isn't doing anything, so why is she demanding?" So that perspective is very strange. Just because I don't have a sweet shop does not mean that I cannot make sweet meat anymore. So that mindset of people where they feel that no, we don't want to hike the price because she hasn't done anything for a long time was very painful. And I left the film because of that. I said I might as well not take any money from this man because he has no heart. You have to be a little kind towards people, especially towards writers, because when people go to see a film, they rarely think of the writer. They're only thinking about the actor, how he's speaking the lines, the action and everything, but they fail to remember that there is someone who's penned those scenes,
Absolutely.
those moments. And that contribution of a writer is overlooked. It's never got the appreciation in our country at all. People don't know anyone other than Javed Akhtar or Salim Saab. I don't think people know many names of writers. So we get lost as time flies. I don't know who's responsible for that. But when I see my films, I just turn away from them.
Yeah,
Because I feel it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but what you're saying is true. People forget कि ये हीरो और हीरोइन जो ये डायलॉग बोल रहे हैं, जो गाना गा रहे हैं, लिपसिंग कर रहे हैं एक तो. Somebody has written these lines. Somebody who's lived those lines is then able to write those lines.
Even the walk. Let's take a recent example of Dhuranthar, of Akshay Khanna walking and going towards the podium, and he stands up there and he says something. Those kind of moments in which the actor enters and the star enters or the actress enters, all those things you whistled at and you clapped at is written by someone. And people have no memory. They don't need to. I remember on Instagram, someone said that, even you are on Instagram. And I just have an account for the heck of it. I'm not very active. So in a conversation on my feed, and somebody just came in saying, I don't care a damn who you are. We just know Imran Hashmi. That is the mindset of general public. And that's what my mother used to say. She wanted me to become an actress. And I said, I want to be a writer. And she would say that you'll get nothing if you become a writer. She was right. It was a prophecy that came true. She said, you will not be regarded as anyone. You will come from darkness, you will be ushered into that darkness.
But don't you think times have changed now, where people have begun to realize that eventually the story and the story alone that is drawing people in or getting them to stay fixed to that screen?
Absolutely. Post Ashiki 2, I did not get too many movie offers because if you're working for a camp, people generally tend to think that this person must be under a contract or something like that.
This whole thing about camps, the reality is that we are all there as long as we make money for the company.
People generally think that if you are working continuously for a particular company, you belong to the company. So I lost a lot of work because people thought that maybe she is in a contract. Once I think I was not working there and years passed, very few people called me. And I wrote those films for corporate houses and they liked my work. Thankfully, they knew the track record, so they gave me a free hand. But then I noticed that the producer doesn't listen to you. He relies on his team.
Right.
So the team, which is a Gen Z team, should listen to it. And no, we didn't like it. They want something more evolved. I'm saying, see, I am a writer. I don't write evolved scripts because my audience is not evolved. This is India. We are making an Indian film. So I said, for this kind of film, I am the wrong writer. So I lost 2-3 projects that way. But come to think of it, a lot of movies that have done very well are basically the linear films, which actually work with the middle class audience, which is the largest audience that goes to see films.
Bilkul.
Those are the films that are running. I mean, the South movies, they are very clear that they do not want to impress Hollywood.
Yeah.
They want to impress their regional audience.
They know who they are.
Yeah. And that is what, for the longest time, Bollywood has stopped doing, that they want to impress the global audience. And you have completely cancelled out your own audience, which thrives on simple storytelling.
Correct.
So simple storytelling has gone.
Simplicity is very hard to achieve.
Yeah.
You have worked in Dance Buzz.
Yeah.
You have sung there. It's very tough to get somebody to part with even a single note unless you have touched their core, whether through your singing or through dancing. So you inherently had a pulse on people's emotions.
Yes.
And that is your strength. You knew how to evoke a response. You knew that you had to evoke that response to be able to get something out.
Yeah.
And used to go looking for work in the day in film companies and used to dance at night.
I started that from the age of, I think, 27. And I met Bhatt Sahab, I think, in my early 30s or mid 30s somewhere.
You were an assistant on Tamanna.
I was
my first film as a
I was
producer.
an assistant in Sir for 80% of the film. Then I was also an assistant to the other films that he was making. Some were 20% left, some were 30% left. In Tadipar, in Sir, then Hame Rahi Pyar Ke, some patchwork was happening. Gumrah patchwork was happening. I was there running around. And I had this ledger. And I did not know that this ledger belongs to this film and this ledger belongs to that film. It was the assistants who would remind me that this is a different film. Because he was directing so many movies at that point of time.
Correct.
But this phase of me being an assistant was before I actually started in the bars. I was a trained Kathak dancer. My sister was an actress. And when she got married and she went away, her husband was doing very well, but we became very dependent for money. For the longest time, my sister used to help us. But then when I was around 17, 18, I couldn't deal with it anymore because it was very humiliating
to watch
my mother.
Yeah.
Because I used to watch my mother. She would come home. When she would come home and give the money and go, it didn't look bad. But there used to be times when she used to refuse. And I remember that we had gone to her bungalow and we were standing outside and there were these big Alsatian dogs just coming, running, barking towards us, and we backed off. And I remember that image of my mother looking almost like a beggar. And she was waiting, holding the bars of the gate and looking inside. And that broke me. That broke me. I said, no, I just want money.
Correct.
Come what may. I don't know what I have to do, what I need to do. But I don't want to see her this way again. And then I openly told her, I said, you do what you want to do with me. You want to sell me, you sell me. I was bitterly crying. I said, I will not see you stand there. My mother also once upon a time used to be a well-to-do woman. She was a dancer. She had money. She was married well, everything. But later times changed and she was a widow now. So I guess when you're a child and you see your mother specifically going through
humiliation, yes,
humiliation,
absolutely.
And these humiliations come from lack of money,
yes.
Nothing else. Lack of money and power. She did not push me into it, but then I met somebody. He was a very rich man, and I told my friends, introduce me to this guy, and I actually became his mistress. And I did this all by myself. My mother was not involved in it. And when she was telling me that you don't need to do all this, I said, no, you just keep quiet. I actually became the mother at that point of time. And I told her to just shut up and keep quiet because I said, I'm not going to see that ever again. My sister was around. She was alive at that point of time. And I couldn't give her much, but I gave her a better life. She never had to go to the gates of my sister ever again after that. Then when I got fed up of being a mistress and because I was a trained dancer, I decided to go abroad and sing and dance. Then I got more money because I was 26, 27, dusky, thin. And the people abroad quite liked what they saw. I never knew that people are so appreciative of this art, dancing and singing, till I actually went there and did it myself. So I made a good amount of money at that point of time also. But then I never saw her at my sister's gate after that. And strangely, my sister never felt my mother's pain. She could have stopped it in whatever capacity that you don't come, I'll come home. At least that much. Of course, she was also stuck in a bad marriage and she had her issues. But still, a good daughter will not like to see her mother standing at the gates for money.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be a good daughter. I wanted to be a better daughter.
So you took charge completely.
I took charge completely. And when she used to thank me, I used to get very hurt. I used to tell her, don't thank me, because this is not a big thing at all. Not wanting to see your mother being humiliated and standing up for it. You have also given me a lot. You've raised me well. You've taken care of me. You've given me the best food to eat and best clothes to wear. You never told me for years and years where you're getting the money from and what are you going through. But you took care of me. So this is nothing. So I used to kind of brush it off. All the thanks that she used to shower on me. Whatever turns and curves I had to take, I just took it all. And I said, I just, anything to see her sitting at home and cooking her meals and eating well. And because see, there's one more something very important I had heard. Okay, if you're very poor, as in destitute, very poor, then you can go to any length to get money. You can become a maid. But if you come from a filmy background, then it becomes very difficult to become a maid. Then
Correct.
it is very easy to say, okay, no, you should have done a better job. I was a 7th grade fail. I failed thrice in school. I was not good in studies because when I saw the environment in my house, the money issues, I couldn't become a good student. I used to fail in school because most of the time I used to hide and see my mother weeping. Every child in my family was very good in the studies, but not me. Why? I was wasting all my time only watching what my mother was going through, and it had that effect on me that I could not study well, and I used to just give blank papers on the examination day, which is why, because of lack of education, there was no jobs. Now there are a lot of job opportunities, but that point of time, I'm talking of the 70s. But then when I used to come back to Bombay, I used to struggle for movies, and when I used to go abroad, I used to make money, but all the money I used to sit back home for 6-7 months and struggle in each and every office. Rejection after rejection because I don't have a resume. Then finally, in 99 or 2000, I decided that I'll go to my early boss because I knew Bhatt Sahab writes.
Correct.
And if this door does not open, then I will never struggle ever again for to become a writer, because if this door shuts, no door is going to open for me again. Ye agar band ho gaya, then there's no way out for me. Then I will only dance and sing for as long as I live.
The rest of your life. But while you were in the dance bars, you were still harboring that dream of being a writer.
Yeah.
And you were still in your head crafting stories and crafting scenes and studying people and picking up nuances. And you've told me some very funny incidents between you and the girls. Anybody else would have been very, very bitter.
Yeah. What I learned there was that I was not the only one. There were many like me. You know, the only difference between me and them was I had been to school. I could speak English, and I came from this movie background. My sister was a star. I was the only odd one out there. But the others, in terms of backgrounds and all that, they were all like me. They all came for money. They all were poor. They needed money. They had mothers.
Right.
Somebody had a child who was deformed and she was doing it because of that. So why do women like myself and them also actually run towards? Because it's instant money, not too much of hard work, and it's safer also.
Right.
When you go abroad and you do this thing, not in Mumbai as such, but in Dubai and abroad, UAE, all these places, it's very safer. It's not filthy and dirty unless and until you want to become filthy and dirty. You're protected. There are people, there are bouncers around you. They take you with a lot of respect. So I was okay with that. So all the women who were there, all the girls, there were little girls, there were even girls who were 12 and 13 and 14. And I remember I went up to her and who put you there? So there was a person, he had actually bought her from Punjab. And her parents were ill and she did not have the money. So there was a 15-year, 12-year girl who had also come to become a beer bar dancer. So they were all like me. And then I saw also that because they were not like I can articulate what I feel, they didn't come from that class. So they would basically laugh a lot. They were a happy bunch. They all interacted with each other. They would joke and all that. And that's what I learned from them. I actually forgot whatever I must have seen. I became like them. I remember some very beautiful moments also which I spent with them. They wouldn't weep much. They would laugh a lot. That was the sweetest thing about them.
So you came back and then you said कि अगर ये दरवाजा नहीं खोलेगा तो that's the end of
Yeah.
it for me. I'm not going to try anymore.
Yeah.
And then you went to Mr. Mahesh Bhatt's
Yeah,
office.
and when I went over there, he said, I don't work with writers outside. I write my own films. And I said, allow me to just pitch one story. And if you think that I am capable of writing, then give me a break. Otherwise, it's fine. And one day, suddenly, at 9 o'clock in the night, I got a call and he was shooting for this film with Dino and Vipasha. He said, I'm shooting here. Bring your story. If I like it, you get a job. Now, I did not have a story at that point of time. So, this is WhatsApp. Not even giving you 24 hours to prepare. Literally how they show into movies. I opened my cupboard. I had very few clothes, but I had a black shirt and a black pant, ironically. I don't even remember how I changed, what I did. I dabbed some talcum powder on my face and I just took an auto and I ran.
Huh.
And finally, when I went over there, I think I must have looked like a little joker with all chalk on my face. But on the way, I said, what do I tell? I have no story. And I just cooked up something and I narrated it to him. When he heard that story, he said, I will not make this film, but judging by what you have come up with, I can say that you can write. This is how it actually began. And then he introduced me to Sony. She and I were supposed to do a film together. Even she said the same thing. Ki, I don't know whether this film will be made, but she's very good with characters. So both of them actually felt that about me. And then Bhatt said, I'll let you know when something is going to come up. And then he introduced me to Mohit. And then I wrote a film for him, which got shelved. And then Mohit did Zahir. Mohit, I remember in Kali Yuga, he told me to just write 2 scenes because I'd seen the film in the editing. And I had said, it's a brilliant film, but there are 2 moments that are missing in the film. And Mohit said, why don't you write those 2 moments that you're missing? I wrote that and he shot it. And when he saw the film with those scenes added, he said, I want to give her Wo Lamhe.
Oh, lovely.
This is how it happened. There was no looking back at all for years and years to come. So the confidence came from Bhatt Sahab, Sony and Mohit. The reason why I'm there. And then later when then I met you and then we had this chemistry, we made 2-3 films together.
Yeah, but I want to take you back to Murder 2. You crafted the most terrifying villain.
Yeah.
How did that idea come about? And you all made it in a amazing budget and it terrified people.
Yeah.
There's this feeling that female writers will write very esoteric films.
Yeah.
You were not like that.
No.
You were very commercial in the way you thought. You just went for the jugular.
Because life came to me that way also.
Correct.
It actually came at me that way, in that force. I've seen a very violent side of life. Even in the beer bars, apart from the girls and the sweet moments, a lot of violence was happening there also. My sister was in an abusive marriage. Her husband was beating her up. There was a lot of screaming, shouting, yelling. It was a mixed bag of a lot of violent things that were happening around me, which is why I preferred to vent out.
Absolutely,
through my
but I think what
writing.
you tapped into was there is this disdain.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that the average man feels for women.
Yeah.
And it comes forth in very perverse ways, and you tapped into that with Murder 2, and that is what worked.
Because when I was exposed to men in different ways, whether it was a beer bar and whether it was my own personal life, I have noticed that they have a very toxic approach towards women, most of them. They're very disrespectful. They're very angry, especially if she's successful or she knows more. A strong woman actually is really puts them off.
Yeah.
Not all, but a huge chunk of men get very put off. The market actually had become such at that point of time that people did not trust original ideas.
Right.
Which is why we had to take an idea from here and there and make a film. But then to adapt and Indianize it, that is also a craft which people underestimate.
And then Ashiki 2.
Yeah.
Which just took the country by storm.
Yeah. And we took Star is Born. But then when you take an English film, to fit it into your middle class world is very difficult. And to make it work at the same time.
Yeah.
Where people tend to spend millions, they take the right and they make the same film.
Right.
That does not work. You have to break it to the sensibility of the Indian audience.
No, but Ashiki 2 really surprised the whole world. I think there was no expectation from that film.
See, even Murder, it was made in a very tight budget.
Yeah, I think Murder was even less than Ashiki 2.
Murder was made in, I think 5 or 6.
Yeah, correct.
And it made around 85. Which was huge.
It was a smash hit. You're supposed to do 4 times the amount of business to be called a super hit.
Absolutely. A lot of people in the industry also, they praised Ashiki for that reason. Of course, it had a lot of other elements, Mohit, music, that had a very endearing star cast. It all fell into place. But it was a very small budget film, but everyone was working with utter sincerity. Also, that is so important.
Absolutely.
And Bhatt Saab's raincoat scene.
Ah.
It was his idea. None of us had this in our memory. I had just written the climax where she's sitting over there in the end and the rain, and she just watches them run away. And Bhatt Saab said, Mohit, use the raincoat scene over here.
Yeah, but that was
and
a master
we jumped.
stroke, huh?
Yeah, we jumped because we did not even think of it. We'd forgotten. We thought it belongs to that film.
Yeah.
It didn't even cross my mind that I should use it. I remember when Bhatt Saab said, Mohit, do one thing. Just put that Ashaki raincoat scene. He's putting the raincoat on her. And Mohit just got up and he stared at Bhatt Saab. He's saying, you are a fucking star. You are a star, man, he said. And that worked, and how?
Wow, so it was just the last moment edition.
Yeah. After he heard the script, after I actually read the scene out, and she comes and she says sign, and she signs.
Yeah.
The children go away and she's just looking at them, and that was rolling titles. I had written that much because we did not even have it in our memory.
Right.
Imagine it was raining and he suddenly thought of the raincoat there, and he even in Tum Hi Ho. He said that use it there.
And I think your equation with Mohit was very special. You had a different connection with him.
Yeah. Because we are both very hyper people. He's a drama king, I'm a drama queen, and we're very hyper, very angry, very scattered people, and yet very rooted. We want our films to be rooted. And then we had Bhatt Saab to control both of us. Sometimes when Mohit and I used to get into these deep arguments and all that, the Bhatt Saab used to kind of calm us down, sit down, take a deep breath and things like that. We fought a lot to get all that right, which we can't dream of today in corporate houses. I cannot fight with anyone to get what I want.
That's true. There's a political correctness
like
that's come into the
Mohit fought
whole...
for a certain kind of music for Murder too. He used to fight, and Bhatt Saab used to get angry, but he used to fight for that kind of music. And I used to fight for this scene should be there, it will be there. So we had the privilege of fighting in the Bhatt camp.
Correct.
With Bhatt Saab, because he was the creative head, and we used to fight. But I don't think so people today have that privilege to
They don't give that room to people.
Yeah, to fight and get that is why, which is why we had all those films that we made. And even if like Avarapan was a flop, but people call it a cult film, all the films that we made are sum total of the kind of fights you have had to get
Bilkul.
the right.
There was always room for anybody to give their opinion कि ये scene काम नहीं कर रहा है, ये गाना बकवास है. Why have you cast this actor? We used to speak openly to each other. Like अगर आपने scene सुनाया, I would say नहीं यार शगुफ्ता मजा नहीं आ रहा है. And you would either convince me or you would get to work immediately and rewrite it. This good manners that has taken over everywhere.
It's destructive.
I don't think there's any room for good manners on a film set.
Yeah, because you are not allowing the writer to have an opinion. You're not allowing anyone to have an opinion. The funder basically wants to see a film that he wants to see.
Yeah.
But we make movies for the audience.
But like all good parties come to an end, that phase came to an end, that golden phase really. But those were magical times.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a certain madness and joy with which we even made our flop films.
But we talked more about the film that we were doing. But I would read a lot of things to us also.
It was such a fertile ground for growth.
Yes.
कि somewhere along the way we all felt valued.
Yeah.
We felt कि यार मुझे काम पे जाना है because my contribution is being valued. आज के दौर में कोई thank you ही नहीं बोलता है शगुफ्ता.
No.
तारीफ तो छोड़ दो. They don't even acknowledge कि यार you've done a good scene. You've given me great lines. Generosity is not the norm today.
We would come to the film later. We would meet. We would talk about so many things that are happening around us.
I mean, Dhoka came from your worldview, Bhatt Saab's worldview. Every moment was felt and steeped in lived experiences.
That's one of my most beloved film because I got an opportunity to speak about homegrown terrorism. It was how it starts, how these small things begin.
Correct.
I wrote a dialogue in my Bengali film कि एक बड़ी आग जो है ना वो छोटे कोने से शुरू होती है.
बिल्कुल.
कि these things start very small.
Yeah.
You get people into the wrong side of life because there is a small spark that is happening in their life, and then it's so easy to like drag them out. So I think nobody will ever make a film like this. It takes more courage to actually make a film like Dhoka.
It had issues that we all felt very deeply for, and it will always be a special film in that sense. But you've also been one of the few consistent, brave voices. You spoke up about Gaza, about the atrocities, when a lot of people were silent. because they were being shut down.
I'm really not concerned about where is my bread and butter coming from. A lot of people who have not spoken are the people who feel that they have a lot to lose.
Correct.
I don't even have enough that I will lose. And even if I had to lose, I think it's important that we take a stand. There are children dying there. They're being starved to death. It's never happened ever in this universe that children have been starved. And it's consistently going on since the last 2-3 years. And when I look at my industry and their silence and they not wanting to say anything, it's understandable. Okay, fine, you have a lot to lose, so you will not take a stand. But is it good to be so silent? Fine, okay, if you're frightened, keep quiet. But then live with that conscience then.
Yeah.
Live with that baggage.
You don't have the fear of being disliked.
Yeah.
The problem with most people is that they're such people pleasers. They might not be impacted financially, but they are so afraid of losing that one follower, that one fan, because they're constantly walking into rooms saying, like me, like me, like me.
I'm against war where innocent children are dying any part of the world. In any part of the world, if anyone is actually indulging in a war in which innocents are dying and lands are getting destroyed and people, we do speak up for that because someone helpless is getting harmed out there. There's a lot of oppression.
Yeah.
The smallest action that you can do is at least speak up about it. Today you feel it's not happening in my house, so let's just ignore it.
Bilkul.
But then how do you know 10 years down the line it is going to creep up in your house? Your children may be the next bunch of children being starved. How do you know? So it's not about their children, their country. It will happen with you too.
Yeah, because we're living in a world of hyper-connectivity supposedly. And if you're connected in so many other ways, it's quite foolish to believe that the fire is not going to reach your doorstep.
Also, you don't want to speak, don't speak. You have the right not to speak, but then live with it that you are a coward.
Which is why I love Javier Bardem.
Huh.
I always loved him as an actor, but he said, if you're not going to give me work for my opinion,
Yeah.
don't give me work.
Absolutely.
But I cannot look away from this. I do not want to be on the wrong side of history.
I was just thinking yesterday, I'm a good cook. I'll take up a few jobs in your house and I'll cook for them. I'm fine with that. Who am I writing for? Is there anyone alive out there? Only people enjoying cinema.
Correct.
But no sympathy, no mercy in them. Am I supposed to write for them, entertain that bunch? A lot of times I have felt, money is important. I do need work, so I do need to write. But at the same time, another thought that comes into my mind is that who am I writing it for? Is there anyone out there?
Is there anyone
out there?
Yeah, I hear you. And also you're somebody at the same time who's not living in the past. I mean, when you say that I can't even bear to watch my reels of my old films, it means you're somebody who has the capacity to say, okay, I have done this. Perhaps my best has passed.
Yeah.
But I've moved on from that because there's a you beyond all of that.
I'm not missing that once in a while when there are a lot of people on Instagram who are praising Shraddha for the scene. And I just feel that what I miss is that don't you have any memory of the person who's written it? That part is a little painful.
Very often people tell me, oh, this song of your film. I said, I had nothing to do with it. Dile ke Materi ke gaane maine thodi na likhe hain.
Yeah.
I have not composed it. Give credit to the person who's composed it. Someone's composed it. Someone has written it. Somebody has shot it. There was a choreographer.
Yeah.
There's an entire battery of people who come together to make the actor shine.
Yeah.
And then the actor walks away with all the accolades.
But
Fair
even,
enough.
Pooja,
But then the film flops.
It all comes from the writer.
Yeah.
The writer was bad. The writer brought the actor down. The writer was not good. He didn't do a good job. So the producer will throw him out. The director will throw him. But the moment it's successful, we are not there. We are not standing on the stage. Whatever moments I got in the limelight is because of Bhatt Saab. Hey, Shagufta, come here. So he would call me up. Nobody would even call me up for those photographs. That little bit of fame, people know me, is all because of Bhatt Saab. Because he made it a point that this is the person who's doing all the hard work for the movies. She has got a role to play and she also should be seen how all the others are being seen.
I want to bring you back to the time when you saw the hoarding of Jislim 2 on Linking Road. It was a humongous hoarding. We didn't have too much money to do 200 hoardings, so we used to pick the best spots and spend our money wisely.
Yes.
So it was quite a sight because that proved that the brand was bigger than the actors in it.
But picture me standing over there when I saw my name. I did not know I'm going to see my name. It was a gorgeous poster and there was my name. And I got down from the auto and I said, wait. And he said, Madam, aapko jane ka, maine kaha, wait. I said, is that my name on the poster? Pooja put my name on the poster. Till then, I had never seen a writer's name on the poster. Maybe few people may be doing it. But you know, with the smallest of fonts, write down, not prominent at all. You actually look for the writer's name. So in this, I could see it. It was there, right there. I froze when I saw that. And then I started crying and weeping. But Pooja put my name on the banner. What is wrong with you? So it was a terrific moment for me.
I just want to come back to the times we are living in, Shagufta, where streaming platforms cater to distracted home viewing. So they push writers and makers for a hook immediately in the first 5 minutes. And then they want key information and the narrative to be repeated again and again because viewers may be on their phone, might miss things. Doesn't that kill classic storytelling?
Of course it does. That is why most of the time our content is fast forwarded also. Because there's no patience. They don't want to see the same thing again.
It's a very important point you're making because very often I've heard people tell me, I said, oh, you've seen this film? They said, yeah, we watched it on fast forward. How can you consume things like that?
There's another very important thing that I noticed when I'm watching a movie or a web series. I'm also playing carom. Then I was thinking, why am I doing it?
Right.
I don't belong to this generation of mobiles. And then it suddenly dawned on me, I'm doing it because I know what is going to be the next scene. But that is not a good sign that we know the story. That is where a good writer and good writing is mostly needed, because if I know the story, my attention is going to be divided.
I was reading an article in Variety, in fact, and they said that if you lean fully into the algorithm, you get content. If you lean fully towards purity, you risk losing the room. Choosing scene by scene where to stand between those two forces, that's where the story and film becomes yours. And I, agree with that, because even this platform that I've chosen, the easy thing to do would have been to do a podcast where the camera was rolling. But I wanted people to listen to the conversations. I wanted them to tune in and not watch the people, but to listen to their heartland.
What was most painful for me was wanting to know who I am also. That also was very important, because I till now don't know who my parents were.
Right.
Now, there are two narratives that actually went alongside. One was that I was an adopted child picked up from some streets, some unfortunate woman who just gave birth to me through me, and then I was brought home.
This is what your mother told you?
Yeah, this is what most of the people told me. And then again, most of the people also told me that my sister is my mother. So now, when you are a young little girl, there are so many stories coming to you, you don't even know who you are. It did have a very bad impact. So if my mother would shout at me, okay, yeah, she's shouting at me because she's not my mother. If my brother is brutal with me, it's because he's not my brother. So I would hesitate to even eat with them, because I thought this is not my food.
Right.
Not my home, not my clothes. And this came into me when I was 11, 12 years old. It was told to me that I am an adopted child. Not every parent is kind and merciful towards the adopted children. The society also won't let you live.
Society is very cruel.
Society is very cruel. I mean, even if my mother would not say anything, or my brother would decide not to say anything, the people would come. Who is she?
आपके सामने बात करते थे.
नहीं, if I'm suppose if they think I'm sleeping, suppose if they think, or suppose if they think I'm playing outside. So do you know still about her parents, who are her mother and father, who are her parents and all that? So my mother would say, don't speak in front of her and all that. So those kind of things also had a very negative impact on me, because I did not like the way those bunch of aunts and uncles were looking at me. And I was a dark child. Another ajeeb racism un logon ka, that this is a family of an actress who was very famous, and there's this dark child that they've adopted. And they would say that even if we wanted to adopt, why didn't you adopt a fair child? Oof. So basically the hurt and the pain and the rejection and everything started very young. Everything else that I did was, okay, this mother, she took care of me, she did this for me, she went through all that and all that, so I want to give it back to her, came much later. Then at the same time, my mother would drill it inside me, you will not go and meet your sister, because her husband is beating her up because of you, because he thinks you are her daughter.
Oh God. So
now, and then if my sister would come home with a bruised face, this is because of me. This is because of me. That part of my childhood is the most difficult part of childhood, which I survived from the age of like 10 or 11 till the age of 18, 19. It just went on and on and on till the time my sister died. He kept on beating her and beating her and beating her and all that. She's your daughter. That is why you go to her. That is why you're helping her.
So she used to stay away then because of that reason? Yeah, she had to stay away.
She had to stay away, and she went through a lot for us. She went through a lot. So everything was so violent around me. And this samaj ke thekedar, the society, what we call, and all that, coming and saying all those rubbish things to you, not wanting to talk to you, the sister's children not very, very kind to you, the brother's children not very kind to you, because they want to believe the other story, that I was picked up. People wanted to believe that story more. She's an actress, and she's my friend, and she can never do this. She can never have a child. But again, this story that I am a sister's daughter came from these underdogs of the movie industry.
Correct.
Who know more, the makeup dadas, those are the people who actually came and told me these things. So all the writing, emotion, pain, everything basically started when I didn't even, when I was not even familiar with these words. But I was familiar with what was happening inside me.
What you were feeling, yeah.
What was happening inside me, I could not give that words. At that point of time, you only have tears, you only have the pain. You feel that the night will not end. This will not end. This is going on and on and on. It's much later, many years later, when I started working with Dikshit ji. And when he heard these things from me, and when I started speaking to him, and he was the first person to tell me, you speak out your pain the way you speak out, you should start writing it. He was the one who actually put it in my head. He was the culprit.
Okay.
Yeah. So I didn't even know. I wanted to write, but I said, Dikshit ji, I envy you because you know how to write. I want to write, but I don't know how to write. And he's saying, see, you speak, you know how to speak. This is how you write.
Correct.
You feel, you write. The germ of that journey actually began there.
So writing became a release for you.
Yeah, because then in whichever scene I could, I actually wanted to just vent.
So you found
out.
your voice then through writing.
Absolutely. And I still have not got that picture yet.
Right.
Where I can express so much that I have felt. And I'm again saying that whatever I'm saying now and I have said in the papers is not even the tip of the iceberg. There's still so much more, because there's days and days. It's 60 years and first 26 years of my life which were horrible, dark, painful. I have no adjectives. I mean, I can't even... I don't basically know what is happiness. I know laughter. I know how to laugh, but I don't know what it is to be happy.
Yeah, you have a rather crazy sense of humor.
Yeah.
But that comes from a place of pain.
Yeah, that comes from there. And I have the ability to laugh at myself. So it actually began from there. I would say my kind of writing, whatever it has, I mean, it's worked for the people who I made it for and all that, was because I could pluck it out from the pain that I had. So I have actually spent so much of myself. So much of myself has been taken away from me for me to even be able to sum up these emotions and bring it on the table and write it. The world has taken away so much from me. I must tell you this. I was just seeing a picture of myself. I was barely like 4 years old or 3 years old. I was looking at the picture and I actually broke down because I was feeling so sorry for the child.
For that little girl.
I mean, having to go through having no love from the family, you're adopted, you're this one's daughter, that one's daughter, all those kind of things. Then not being able to fare well in school, not being able to speak. So all the anger, the hitting back actually came out from I don't care a damn about the world.
Yeah. But it's never too late to have a happy childhood.
Yeah.
So
on my birthday, I gift myself. On Eid, I go and buy and gift myself. Yeah, I'm happy.
And you live in your home with birds that you don't cage them. You rescued them.
I've given them a room, half of my bedroom. There's just a little partition there because there's a fan running. And there are like 4 or 5 of them with me from the last 10 years now. So they know me and I know them. And they've been my constant companions.
Your budgies, na?
First there were like 15, 20 of them. And now there are 2 budgies, 2 finches and 3 cockatiels. The family is shrinking now. Even they are leaving me. And when I look at them, I break down. They've lived with me the most, 10 years and above. So goodbyes.
Through this all, I'm sure there are stories that still come to you. Do you pen them down?
Yeah, lots of them. Lots. In fact, I've got a sack full of them now, and very soon I'm going to go to the municipality. I'm going to take that hand cart, the push. I'm going to put all my stories in that, and I'm going to Sell them like how people sell apples. Because इतनी कहानियां हो गई हैं, अब पड़ी हुई है, सड़ रही है, तो अभी कोई नहीं ले रहा है, तो मेरे को हाथ गाड़ी पे डाल के बाहर आना पड़ेगा ना, because nobody is calling me. So I'll take my wares and I'll go in every gully and I'll say, ले लो, ले लो.
एक कहानी ले लो.
एक कहानी ले लो, 10,000 में ले लो, 5,000 में ले लो, पर ले लो. Because if I die, they're going to die with me.
Oh God, you're hilarious. But I think that you've had a marvelous journey, and I think that you may have much to be proud of. I know it must be tough, and I agree with you that no matter what people tell us, that money is not important. Money is important.
It is important
because it gives you your self-esteem.
But Sab had asked me when I had gone to meet him for the first time, what do you want? I said, I want power and money.
Everybody wants this, Shagufta. They don't say it so plainly.
I said it because it's not a good thing to hide from a transparent man. And power as in when you're famous,
yes,
you get more work, you get more money and all that. Not that insane power. No,
of course, I know what you mean.
When you can go to any lengths to get money, not that. Power and money to be known. Because I have been humiliated for various reasons. That made me very powerless. So when I say power, I'm looking at being respected.
Living life on your own terms.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. Since you were a singer and dancer, what is the one song that would describe Shagufta Rafiq and the journey she's had?
Very ironical, it's one of Bhatt Saab's favorite songs also. It was Shab Ke Jaage Hue. Because there's a certain kind of silence in that song which I have never heard. That's the perpetual state of mind in which I live, I think.
There's a desolation there, but that desolation is beautiful. And I think that echoes with you and your insides. You are a very stark woman. And a lot of people could be very scared of that starkness because people are so used to dressing up things with pretty lies. And that's not the key on which you lived, and that's not the key on which you wrote.
I remember when I was a child, they were enjoying telling me that you're adopted, you're picked up, you're Aya's daughter. But I remember when I started saying it, then they got so upset with me.
You took the joy away from them.
Yeah, I took the joy, snatched it from them. They were so upset with me. You should not speak like this about yourself. I said, why? Was it okay when you spoke about it? But when I speak about it, you get rattled. No, then I must rattle you more. I must do this more often.
Yes. I agree.
So everything comes from there.
Because that's what it is. Now you hide something from the world and they will try to humiliate you with that.
So they were saying, ये वो लड़की है जो पाली हुई है. This is the adopted child. They whisper. And I would see एक बार whisper, दो बार, तीन बार, and then I grew up. But when I grew up, I said, my name is Shagufta. I am the adopted child of Mrs. Anjali Begum. How can you say that? Beta ji, this is not the way to talk. I said, what happened to all that when you said that about me? And I saw that they were shivering with anger. And I loved it. And I said, this is the only way to survive.
I agree with you.
You cannot survive any other way.
That you do not give them the privilege of that humiliation.
Yeah.
But where do you think we are as a race with regards to humanity?
We are spot jogging.
We are spot jogging, going nowhere fast.
Spot jogging, waiting for the next calamity to hit us. Because if you're not going to heal the other, you are also going to get bruised and injured. So you're waiting for that to happen actually. By being silent, quiet, and you basically spot jogging, comfortable in your little nest. It's comfortable now, it will not be comfortable forever.
One of the complaints I have with films that I watch, at least in recent times, I'm like, I go into the cinema hall or I watch a show, I want to feel something.
Yeah.
I want to feel moved. I want to feel transformed. I find that largely missing from the Hindi film industry. Why have we lost this ability to feel and to make the other feel?
Because the person who has actually now come into the movie world perhaps has not even lived life. He's not touched anything. There's nothing that he's gone through. And even if he's gone through, he cannot articulate it. So if you read a book like Taste of Life and there's a person, the author out there, able to articulate it, it is because he's lived it. And he's able to articulate it also.
You know, talking about Taste of Life, I was going to ask you, my father, I remember in that phase, was bottling it all up and buried himself in work at that point to be able to cope with UG's passing. But it was something that you read to him.
Yeah.
And I want you to talk about that actually gave him that release.
Bhatt Saab had not cried for months and months, and he used to work mechanically. The people around him, they would tell him, you should cry, it's not good to bottle up. And his body just refused to break down. But then one fine day, I think in the afternoon, I said that there's a little incident about Abu Bakr, who was the closest companion to Prophet Muhammad, may peace be on him. And I said that there's a quote, and shall I just read it out? And he said, yeah. So I was reading that quote to him in which when the Prophet passed away, he he had become very lonely because he felt that everything around him had just collapsed. He had become so lonely. And when he saw his body, he bathed him and he said that you will never know death again. And he wept. He covered his face and he wept. When I narrated this, I don't know what happened because it was not with the intention. I was just reading. I said, such a beautiful little piece. I don't clearly remember, but this was the essence of it. And when I read it out to him, that bit that he saw him and he turned around and he wept in that red cloth. So that picture of Abu Bakr weeping like that and his friend passing away, suddenly he burst out. And I remember he cried for almost 45 minutes. Thankfully, there was nobody there around him. And I did not say, "Ye pani pee lo," nothing. Yeah. I just backed up and I just sat there and he went on and on and on. And then after 45 to 50 minutes, he got up and he went away home. Next day when I asked him what had happened, he's saying, no, it's passing away of a friend. Yeah. And I thought that this is only my emotion, but this is an emotion which people have felt before. And he had read a lot about Abu Bakr's love for the Prophet and all this. So he knew the man, which is why when I narrated this to him, he just felt his loneliness. The loneliness of Abu Bakr hit him. Yeah. And that is what compelled him to break down like this. And it was not designed. I was just reading out like I would read out a share to him. I would read out a scene to him. Little did I know what it would do. And he was still in the midst of writing Taste of Life.
But thank you for that. No, thank you for that, really. It healed him.
It was really not planned. And when he put it in a book, I was very surprised because I did not know that it was an important moment of his life that it will be penned. But अब मैं suddenly अमर हो गई उस किताब में. मैंने कभी भी नहीं सोचा था कि मैं अमर हो जाऊंगी. But then I called Bhatt Sahab and I read the book and I saw my name. I said, you wrote about me. He said, yeah, because you made me cry.
But when you talk about your mother, and you said that it was like a prophecy of hers where she said कि एक्टर बन जाओ, राइटर बनोगी तो लोग वैल्यू नहीं करेंगे आपको. You actually proved that wrong in a sense, in a way, at that time when you had that phase of great success. Was she around to see your success and your flight? So she didn't see your flight?
No, I got my first film in 2006. She died in 2002. But I remember that because I had started meeting Bhatt Sahab initially, and the task that he had given me was read scripts by other writers and tell me how it is and give me your feedback. So that was my first job. So my mother knew that this is what I was doing for Bhatt Sahab. And alongside, at that point of time, I was singing and dancing in Bombay. Once when she became very sick and she was like about to die and all that, I was a little worried. Bhatt Sahab, what's wrong? I said, my mother is not well. And so he said, I'll come to see your mother. Very few people know this. He came to see my mother and she was actually losing her memory. But when she saw him, she instantly recognized him. My God. She instantly recognized because she was a huge fan. And I said, but my house is very small. We have a very small house. And I'm, very conscious about Mahesh Bhatt coming to see my mother. He came and she was apni dhun ki mein thi, but the moment she saw him, her face, like, she got a glow. I mean, she just looked at him, she's saying, oh, itna bada aadmi mere ghar mein. And she like curled like a cat. And then Bhatt Sahab said that आप ठीक हो जाएंगी. So she basically was an industry person. She used to do small roles in the 30s, and my sister became an actress in the 60s. So she had seen enough of what writers went through. Unless and until he's a Guru Dutt's writer or he's a K. Asif's writer. But other writers and all would be sitting in the corner just waiting for their turn to come. But Abrar Alvi and all these writers, they enjoyed, walking hand in hand and sitting next to a Guru Dutt. And all. She said, कि सबको नहीं मिलता वो. You will not get the success. Actors get success. They are known. But plenty of years later, I realized she was right in many ways. That if you're not brushing your shoulders with a big name, like I enjoyed a lot of success when I was with Bhatt Sahab. So people were seeing me. So I got a lot of respect, and people. Like Shagufta ji. But the same people I've seen that now when I'm not with him, I've noticed a couple of people who saw me and they turned away. So this is how this industry works. A writer has to be with someone big. You have to have someone around you जिसके नाम से, जिसके साये में आपको जो है लोग इज्जत दें. आपकी अपनी कोई इज्जत नहीं है. I had not seen this. She had seen this. So she was passing it on to me. But when I saw this and I understood it.
So these words came back to haunt you later.
It came back to haunt me. But then she was right. She was absolutely right.
But I was heartbroken with what you told me about that you looked at that photo of you as a little child and you wept for that little child. But
Yeah.
there must be moments of joy that you also hold on to. What are your most tender moments with your mother?
Very strangely, the moments which I spent with my sister. There was a very deep connect that I used to feel because there was something about her love which was much more
Maternal.
spelled out, paternal and beautiful, and something about her embrace. Something, and she was very protective about me. And these were the things actually which added more fuel to the fire also. Now I will never know whether this is the truth. एक होता है ना कि I want something. I want a share in the property. I want money. I want share in her success. A, she was not successful. B, she was not some royal family woman and all that. I want something out of her. When I say these things because I grew up with that confusion. The worst thing is that people who knew her get so angry and annoyed with me for even thinking कि सोचना भी मत that you are her daughter. सोचना भी मत मेरी सहेली हरामी बच्चे को पैदा नहीं करेगी तो ऐसा सोचना भी मत. And I would feel so hurt and so pained by that कि my sister / my mother, she was an ordinary human being. Human beings make mistakes because she's your friend, because she's close to you. So she cannot have me. I can't be the legitimate daughter. That narrative suits them more, that I was picked up from the streets. My mother was a servant. That suits them. ये बोलो. ये narrative बोलो, ये हमको अच्छा लगता है क्योंकि ये सच है. This is the truth. But how do you know so much? Even if I go back in timeline, they were not even there at that point of time when these things may have happened in the early 60s. But any which ways, I at least from that point onwards, I actually don't like people anymore because मुझे लगता है कि लोग बात बहुत करते हैं और गलत बात ज़्यादा करते हैं.
Correct.
गलत बात करने वाले लोग ज़्यादा हैं. सही बात करने वाले merciful people who are kind. We very few kind people left. Then I back answered. I said, see, I don't even care a damn. I'm more famous than my sister. I gave successful films. I gave hit movies. My sister was not a successful actress. She ran away too soon. She abandoned her mother. She got married. She went away. So she is not my hero.
Right.
I sympathize with her as a human being that she went through a horrific marriage. She loved me. I love her back. If you're trying to say that I am saying these things because she was an actress, that's an absolute lie. I'm not interested in climbing up on the ladder built by someone else. No, that's not me. But also, Pooja, what is important, even for other writers, you need to, even if when you write a film, there has to be some element of truth in what you're saying, or even if it's a lie, you believe in that lie.
Right.
Because in Ashiki also, Shraddha Kapoor's character is also taken from my days in the bar. My mother used to pull lotteries for money. I put that into Shraddha's mother's character. So there are a lot of chunks from my own life which also I put in my movies, and I only thank my destiny, my it's not my own, it was given to me. Whatever was served to me through destiny, I actually added those elements also that actually added to my success.
So there's no alternate to a lived life.
No, और फिर झूठ भी अगर है तो फिर उसको फिर say it with a flair.
बिल्कुल.
So even if it is something, if you've not gone through it, but it's a situation, you know it, but you have to sleep with that situation. Let it live inside you, flow inside you. Only then you'll be able to pen it down. And if my resume is not going forward, is because there is no other Mahesh Bhatt.
Yeah, I hear you.
Unless there's another Mahesh Bhatt, I don't think so. I have another film. Whatever work I have done and the way people have loved that work and admired that work, even if they don't know me, they've loved the work. It's enough for me to last a lifetime. All that love and adulation that I got.
Shagufta, you've had quite a life. That's why the first question I asked you was, I said, do you remember what you've done? Not for any other reason, I don't even believe in walking down that street called nostalgia very often. We are in the now.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's important to not forget.
Yeah.
Heartfelt conversation. Shagufta Rafiq is going to go back to her home, back to the birds who survived with her.
Yes, absolutely.
And you're going to dream up more stories.
Yes.
So thank you very, very much.
Say, Pooja, thank you so much for having me on the show.
The Pooja Bhatt Show is produced by Mammoth Media Asia and Epilogue Entertainment and distributed by iHeart Podcasts. The executive producer is Jonathan Strickland.